my beautiful friends of the internet. So today I'm doing a reading vlog where I give in-depth reviews on 4 books recommended by Melissa Broder. Now, if you don't know who Melissa Broder is, she is an author of the books The Pisces, Milk-Fed, Death Valley, So Sad Today, and she also has a poetry book that I have not read. But yeah, I love Melissa Broder's books. If you've been on my channel a while, I've read all of them pretty much back to back in the beginning of 2024. Absolutely fell in love with her writing and her style, and her books just touch me. Not literally, but emotionally, obviously. Her books just like touch my heart in a way where she's so real and raw and vulnerable with her writing, and it makes it so relatable, especially in terms with mental health. She did have an anonymous Twitter account called So Sad Today that blew up and had like over 1 million followers, I believe, and then she turned that into a book, obviously, So Sad Today. So yeah, and she's just overall a really cool, chill person. I actually had the pleasure of kind of hanging out with her virtually. She did a tarot card reading on me and my friend Chris, and she's just as lovely and sweet and funny and charming as she appears online. I don't know, there's just something about her. I just love her vibe. Her overall presence is just so pleasant. So yeah, I was listening to a podcast where she was a guest. Honestly, I'll like leave the title of the podcast on here because I forget, but she was saying she has a list of her favorite books of longing online. If you go online and type in Melissa Broder books of longing, there's a list that comes up of her favorite books about longing and yearning, and that's a topic that I'm absolutely obsessed with. I'm like the queen of yearning, okay? I'm a Pisces moon, queen of yearning, queen of delusion, I don't know. So I got the idea to take some of her book recs, and I purchased some in my latest haul, and I was like, maybe I should just vlog Melissa Broder's book recs. But then I also took some recommendations elsewhere, so I'm going to show you the 4 books and kind of explain why I picked these 4. So first of all, we have The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante. This one was on the Books of Longing list. And then I Wished by Dennis Cooper was also on that list. I freaking love Dennis Cooper. Listen, the sluts. I love the sluts. Okay, very popular transgressive author. And then in my classics haul that I just did not that long ago, I picked up The Princess of 72nd Street. Melissa Broder did the intro for this one. So she wrote the intro for this revised UK edition. And then last but not least, Mrs. March by Virginia Fietto. This is a thriller. It's like a literary thriller. This one I got from her Instagram, maybe. She also posts every once in a while, like on her Instagram story, some of her favorite books, like top 5, blah, 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 or what, you know, she'll put on there like some of her favorite books. So I think I got this one from there. And she also gave this one 5 stars on Goodreads. So those are the 4 books that I read in this video, and then I did give some in-depth reviews. So if you want to see how I felt about these books, just go ahead and keep watching. Hello, vlog! I have to keep an eye on the time because I have to start work in like 3 minutes. I just have to make an appearance so people think that I'm working. I started reading The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante. So this book here, I got 93 pages in. I'm reading super slow this month because my endometriosis pain has just been absolutely terrible. I'm having like a full-blown massive flare, and like everything's hurting so bad. So it's been hard for me to concentrate, but I got 93 pages in and I really like it so far. I'm not obsessed, but I hear like the second half is what seals the deal for everyone. So we're basically following this woman. She's in her late 30s and she's been married for like 15 years, I believe, and her husband leaves. he finds another woman and he leaves her. And so we're following her, just kind of depressed and spiraling after that. So apparently they have broken up multiple times before, like he's left her, he's done the same thing before, and then he always comes back. So he leaves her and she's like, it's fine, he'll be back, and he doesn't come back. So now she's, you know, living alone, and they're going through a divorce, and she has 2 kids. So she's living alone with her 2 kids and her German Shepherd, and we're just following her kind of like descent into madness, pretty much. It's very, very well written, very, very well written, and it is translated. What is this translated from? I'm honestly not sure. I want to say Italian. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, excellent writing so far. Really, I feel like I'm in this character's head. I feel like yeah, this was originally in Italian. So I feel like I'm in this character's head. I feel like I'm just right there with her, feeling her pain and her emotions and like what's going on. There are some animal cruelty scenes in this book involving the dog. Okay, so if you love dogs and you can't handle that, don't read this book, honestly. There's that. Like, I typically don't get that freaked out anymore with anything when I'm reading, but there was one scene that like traumatized me a little bit when I was trying to fall asleep. So yeah, do with that information what you will, but otherwise, like, she's getting more and more unhinged as the book goes on, and like you see the way that her trauma and her pain is manifesting and the things that she's doing to cope with the pain, and how it's changing her behavior in her day-to-day life. I am going to go make an appearance at work. I will be right back, and I want to read you some quotes because I feel like the quotes... I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I feel like sometimes quotes are the thing that persuade me to read a book. Like, I know my friend Chris will read quotes to me through like voice notes, and sometimes I'm like, oh my god, that's so beautiful, I have to read that book. So I feel like reading the quotes, you kind of get a feel for the writing style, and you get a feel for like if you think that you would like the book. So throughout the book, her kind of downward spiral is described as an absence of sense, which I feel like that was the phrase that got me to purchase this book pretty much. I was like, absence of sense, that sounds like me. That sounds so Meg-coded, right? So she's like kind of thinking of all these things that would bring him back. So she's like, oh my god, what if my child became injured and like then he would surely come home. Like, this is her thought process throughout the book, which is terrifying. Like, she will do anything to get this man back. We have to do everything we can so he won't go away again. Like, I mean, that's not a quote that I'm gonna read you, but if you just get a glimpse here as to what we're working with. Sorry for the lighting, I had to switch spots really quick. It's very chaotic this morning. Real quick, I just want to read you this one passage that I feel like summarizes this book pretty well. Everything was so random. As a girl, I had fallen in love with Mario, but I could have fallen in love with anyone. A body to which we end up attributing to who knows what meanings. A long passage of life together, and you think he's the only man you can happily be with. You credit him with countless critical virtues, and instead he's just a reed that emits sound of falsehood. You don't know who he really is. He doesn't know himself. We are occasions. We consummate life and lose it because in some long ago time, someone in the desire to unload his cock inside us was nice, chose us among women. We take for some sort of kindness addressed to us alone in the banal desire for sex. We love his desire to fuck. We are so dazzled by it that we think it's the desire to fuck only us and us alone. Oh yes, he is so special, and who has recognized us as special? We give it a name, that desire of the cock. We personalize it. We call it love. To hell with that dazzlement, that unfounded titillation. Once he fucked me, now he fucks someone else. What claim do I have? Time passes, one goes, another arrives. I was about to swallow some pills. I wanted to sleep lying in the darkest depths of myself. Do you see? Do you see what I mean? Ah! Okay, I have to go work, but I will update you in a little bit. Hello vlog, it's the next day. I just, it's my lunch break. I just walked my dog and like, it is so windy outside. I'm like short of breath. My hair is in knots. Anyways, I just finished up, it's the next day. I just finished up The Days of Abandonment. I really loved this. I will say, if you have a problem with anything involving animals in books, especially dogs, absolutely do not want, like 100% absolutely do not read this book, okay? I was a little traumatized and angry at some of the things that have happened in this book. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not even a case of like, oh, there's this one scene that you can skip over. It's like multiple things happen throughout the entire book. So, and it's like one of the most prominent things that happens in the book, so it keeps getting brought up and mentioned. So like, just don't read this all together. But aside from that, I really, really enjoyed this book. This is like OG feminine rage, unhinged woman, okay? Those titles get thrown around like a million times a day, and we constantly see Mayfly and The Eyes Are the Best Part and the same washed up freaking mainstream horror books over and over that I can't stand personally. If you love those books, I love that for you, but I just personally can't stand them. So it's like, oh my God, a woman's angry and kills men. Like, we've seen it time and time again, okay? This was from 2002, I believe. Yes, copyright 2002. This is kind of like unhinged feminine rage before it became like this popular thing on the internet, right? I do feel like this is one of the most well-written unhinged woman books out there, and just reading her descent into madness was just a wild ride, okay? Definitely the second half of the book is better than the first half, like everyone says. So you just have to stick with it. It did drag in some parts for me, but I really ended up loving it in the end and how it wrapped up. It's not a perfect book by any means, but it is perfect in a sense where the way that her kind of madness, the way that it manifested throughout her life, and we saw her abandonment issues and her trauma resurface in just her day-to-day life, and the way that that trauma made her react towards her kids, her loved ones, and the way that she kept pushing away like really great people in her life because of her trauma. Oh, so relatable. And I also just like the touch of the commentary on like motherhood and womanhood, and how she's like abandoned alone with these two little kids, and how she's expected to care for them, and at the same time she's going through this grief process, because when you go through a breakup, you know, they were married for like more than 10 years. So when you go through a breakup, especially after a relationship that lasted for so long, you go through this grieving process, and it's like you're upset, you're depressed, but then you become angry, and then you start kind of sitting and thinking about like, okay, where did things start going wrong? And you start questioning things, and you start not believing yourself, or it's this constant process of trying to figure things out, and figure your own mental health out, figure your ex-partner's mental health out, and figure out like where to go from that point on. And I think that that whole grieving process, and then like being angry and taking your pain out on others, like hurt people. And I think that whole process of grief was really explored beautifully and so well done in this book. But yeah, parts of this were so painful to read. and parts of this made me very, very angry. So yeah, my emotions were kind of all over the place reading this one. I highly recommend, as long as you can handle the animal stuff. Yeah, if you're looking for unhinged woman, feminine rage, descent into madness, you don't know like what is happening, what's not happening, I would totally recommend this book. Oh, also, I think I got sidetracked a little bit. I wanted to mention just the way that she's expected to kind of keep going through day-to-day life and taking care of her kids, and the stress that puts on you just as a parent in general, but like as a single parent and then going through like a grieving process. This book captured that so well. That's what I wanted to mention. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with like a 4.5. I loved it. It wasn't quite a perfect 5-star for me, but would totally recommend. And then I started The Princess of 72nd Street. I read the intro so far by Melissa. So she did a great job just kind of like introducing this book. It's about mental health. Also, Sarah Rose Etter has a blurb on the back as well. I love her books, Ripe and the Book of X. So, I mean, from Melissa's introduction, this sounds amazing to me. And I can't wait to dive into this one. It's very short. It's only like 137 pages or something. So I'm hoping that I can get through this one and finish it up by tomorrow. So I will keep you updated. I have to go back to work now. Hello! So it is the next day. I only got 37 pages into this last night, but I only have 100 pages left. So we'll see how far I can get into this. I will definitely finish this by tomorrow, hopefully, fingers crossed. I don't read too much on the weekends. Today's Saturday. Typically I don't read a ton on the weekends because I'm like filming, editing, cleaning. I'm gonna stop at Justin's, see the cat and the turtle, and so yeah, I'm gonna kind of be out and about. I have some like errands and stuff to do, but it is Saturday afternoon already, and yeah, so like I said, I got 37 pages into this, and I absolutely fucking love this. I'm already calling this. This is probably going to be 5 stars for me. So this is a book about mental health and mental illness, and we are following this woman, Ellen, and it's the 70s, and she is struggling with bipolar disorder. So she goes through these periods of radiance, which is mania. And so she's on her 7th episode of radiance, or whatever she calls it in the book. So when she has these periods of radiance, she believes that she is a princess on 72nd Street. So she starts kind of telling us about her life as a princess and what her rules are in her head, and like how she views people on 72nd Street and this and that. And it's a lot of commentary about mental health, obviously, and women, and how women are treated when you have a mental health disorder, and just how women are treated in general. Lots of commentary about gender inequality and shitty men. Okay, today is National Women's Day as I'm reading this, and it's very fitting. I feel like, I don't know, I just absolutely love the way that it's written, because it's funny too. So it's like very deadpan satire. Like I'm so into it. I'm so into the writing. This was written in like 1979 or something, so it's not super ancient and difficult to understand. It's very straightforward. But I love how, like, for example, she's like talking about how she is so into monogamy, right? And she's like, she's like, I think all men need to basically just get their eyeballs removed and just be blind if they're in a relationship, so that way they can't look at other women. And she's just talking about like shitty men, and then she's like, also, I don't believe that women should be, you know, looking at other men in relationships and sleeping with married men, etc. But what's interesting is, like, she says all these things, but then we start looking into her personal relationships, so we are getting a glimpse into like some of the men that she sleeps around with, and like some of them are married. And you know, when she goes through these like periods of radiance, it's like she's just acting like a different individual, and she can't help that, and she can't control that. And it's interesting, like her relationships with men, a lot of the men in this book are more mentally ill than she is. Like, they are so far gone. And the way that, like I said, that gender inequality, like, there's a psychiatrist in the book and he'll look at the guy and be like, yeah, you're a little mentally ill, but like, you know what, that's fine. You know why? It's because of the woman. And then everything's blamed on the woman, and her mental health disorder is ruining the lives of these men, and etc. And so I feel like there's just a lot of commentary about like feminism, and I don't know, I really fucking love this so far. And again, I almost feel like this is like one of the original feminine unhinged woman books. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just trying to find some quotes here. Let me see. If you marry a man for money, then you don't have to concern yourself. Every man will make both the most beautiful or the most homely woman, according to current standards, feel unattractive most of the time. I don't think they do it purposely or unconsciously. It's in their eyes. The women who go about barefaced, scrubbed clean, with tiny eyes and no lips in the name of what is called the women's movement are saying, like me for what I really am. Well, they are fools. No one likes anyone for what they really are, but even if they were to improve their faces as they used to, they would get the same result. Then why not remove the eyes of men so that they might sense the souls of women and focus better? It's giving the eyes are the best part, but well written. I am also severe, though not quite as punitive, with members of my own sex. They don't have such mobile eyes. Any woman who breaks up a marriage by enticing or bewitching a married man should be exiled. Those women live together on an island far away from all men. When a woman is introduced to another woman's lover or husband, she ought to not pay attention to him. She should speak in a dull voice of dull things to his wife. Her eyes must be lowered at all times. Some of our women, unfortunately, are most attracted to those who belong to another, liking to play for power or act out father fixations. These should be banished or deprived of estrogen and progesterone. In my experience of watching everything, women's eyes and attention do not often stray to other men, at least hardly so in proportion to the sins of the male. Still, if everyone were blind, would they not make better choices? By sound, be less prejudiced, and pay attention to the person they are at the movies with? I mean, I'm living, laughing, loving for this book so far. I don't need LSD for things to look pretty, talking about her mania. But yeah, she's just kind of going about her life, like describing her mental health and these shitty men in such a humorous way, as you can tell, but also there's just, again, like a deep layer of sadness to it. And I love this so far. I absolutely love this so far. So I'm going to see how far I can get, and obviously I'll update you once I'm finished, since this is such a short book. Hello, it's the next day. I ended up calling off work today. I used my FMLA because I have an appointment this afternoon, and I had a dentist appointment just now, so my mouth is completely numb and my lip might be swollen. I don't know. Does it look like I have lip injections? Should I get lip injections? I feel like that's a hot look for me. So I finished The Princess on 72nd Street last night. Let's talk about it. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So I really loved this book. Is it a 5-star like I predicted? Close, but I don't think so. It's like 4.5. I really loved it. It's just the actual like writing, the narration of the story was a little bit disjointed. Like it almost felt like essays throughout the book, because we are following our main character and all of these relationships that she's been in with men. So we're following like her ex-husband and like how they met and how their marriage went, and then like another guy that she dated, or like a guy that she hooked up with, or whatever. And we're following these I'm having such a hard time speaking, oh my god. And we're following these different relationships and all these shitty men basically, and how men have treated her. especially regarding her mental illness, but just in general, lots of abuse, some touchy, dark subject matter, and yeah, basically just follows like the gender inequality of what it looks like to be a woman who's mentally ill versus if you're a man and you're mentally ill, especially during this time period, and like the shitty doctor. The psychiatrist is like the most mentally ill person in this book, okay? And yeah, just the horrible things that have happened in her relationships. And I enjoyed learning about these things, and I enjoyed this main character. This is another kind of like feminine rage, unhinged woman sort of book. But like I said, it does kind of feel like essays from time to time because it is a little disjointed and like there's not much going on other than learning about this woman and the men that she's involved with. I really enjoyed the deep dive into her mental illness and kind of the experiences that she deals with during these periods of radiance and what these episodes of mania look like to her. And throughout the book, like, she is very self-aware and she's very realistic. She's like, this is what I'm thinking at the time during this period of radiance. And then when it's over, this is what I'm thinking and this is how I am. And she's very like matter of fact and realistic, despite struggling with her mental illness. So I really just enjoyed the portrayal of her mental illness. So it says here, it is lonely when the cold comes to 72nd Street and suddenly there is a silence in the apartment and no one to talk to. Then it's more difficult to survey my kingdom. All those terrible moments, days, weeks, months of detachment, terror, and trembling, things I forget during the heights of my radiance, like those long gashes of time between people, like Ariel, Alan, or even Rombert. Energy decreases. The live part of me fades or diminishes. Now the radiance has gone out, sizzling like a dead light bulb. So spot on, relatable to me. So it says, try not to worry so much. I don't think you are empty inside, and I feel much closer to you because you've let me know some of your fears. My problem is that I've always been in love with magic and with beauty and wanted someone to erase the pain of everyday reality. Of course, no one can. I never wanted to be an ordinary person. I don't know how to be loved in an ordinary way. Or if I want that, the day-to-day ups and downs, insecurities, being taken for granted, being treated like everyone else, it's hard for me. At least it has been in the past. And in my trying to get away from it, I've done things that you might not be able to accept, that you might not understand, but I don't want to have to hide things or deny them even to myself. Relatable. Love this. So again, this is like another 4.5 book for me. So I'm going 4.5 for this, 4.5 for The Days of Abandonment. They're not perfect books, but they are close. So I am going to, I think I'm gonna read Dennis Cooper next. I wished. I really enjoy Dennis Cooper, so I can't wait to dive into that one, give you my thoughts. Yeah, I'm rereading a bunch of Bret Easton Ellis books at the same time to prepare for my Bret Easton Ellis video, and all his books are like legit 5 stars for me. So now nothing is comparing. I'm like, it's close, but it's not Bret. Oh, hi kids. It's later in the afternoon. I have to get ready to go to another appointment soon, but I've been reading most of the day. And falling asleep on my couch, so very productive day, and I ran errands, but I ended up getting 80 pages into I Wished. This is very short. This is only 127 pages, so I might even finish this up later today. Who knows? Who knows if I'm feeling wild, but I really love this so far, and so let's talk about it, okay? I got lots of tabs in, again with this one. Melissa Broder is on a roll, let me tell you. So if you guys don't know about me and my history with Dennis Cooper, I love the sluts, okay? I'm telling everyone about the sluts at all times. If you've been on my channel for a while, I love talking about the sluts, okay? The Sluts is a very disturbing, transgressive fiction novel. And then he has his George Miles series, which are 5 books, and talking about he believes the only man that he's ever loved is this George Miles, who he met when he was a teenager. So they fell in love, or he fell in love with George as a teenager. And so these books are kind of just, you know, fictionalized, disturbing versions of him trying to like process his obsession and his feelings for George Miles. And then I Wished is a very interesting book. It's very experimental. So it's a weird one because it's like kind of autofiction. It's fiction, but there are some chapters kind of mixed in that are nonfiction or like about nonfiction subject matter. It's kind of all over the place. I guess experimental is the best way that I can describe this book to you. But it is kind of like essays, like each chapter is a different story. We have a story about Santa Claus. There's a story about James Turrell, which I had no idea who that was. He's an artist. And then there's a story, apparently I didn't get there yet, but there's a story about John Wayne Gacy. Like this book is all over the place. So this book is about George Miles, and it's, you know, it was Dennis's first book in like 10 years. And for years and years and years, he kind of put George in the back of his mind and, you know, went periods of time without thinking about him, and then didn't realize that George had died by suicide. And I guess he had no idea for like a very long time that this happened. So then he wrote this book kind of processing his feelings for George. And so it's a book about love and yearning and longing and obsession and kind of processing his feelings for why George never loved him back. And a large part of that is most likely due to the fact that George was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and so he was unable to love him back in the way that Dennis needed, or just like his inability to love or reciprocate Dennis's love in general. So it's a book processing those emotions and thoughts. So yeah, this is him trying to understand himself, understand the situation, and kind of turn George into these like fictionalized stories to like process what is going on, if that makes sense. So he puts George into this story about Santa Claus, and he puts George into this story about James Turrell and this like crater, just like weird stories. So when I say this book is about yearning and longing, it is very, very beautiful. It's deeply sad. It has this overwhelming sense of yearning is coming through in this book. And when I say that, when I'm like, this book is about love and yearning, like I don't want like Colleen Hoover fans going out and being like, oh, this is a book for me. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, you might love this book if you love Colleen Hoover. Hey, but I'm just saying, like, you have to know what you're getting into. Like, it's very experimental. I think if you like transgressive fiction, if you like experimental books, if you've liked Dennis's work in the past and you haven't read this one yet, if you like, even like Oteza Moshfegh is kind of coming to mind, like McGlue, just like these weird novels that are poetic in a way where you have to kind of dig and find the meaning of what he's trying to say, because there's a lot of metaphors, there's a lot of just like very strange, weird stories in here that you have to piece together. So if you're someone that likes to think, I would recommend this book to you. If this does not sound like something that you would be interested in, then don't read it, okay? I don't know if I'm doing my best explaining this book, but I do really, really love it so far. I can read you some things. So this is from the first page. So this is Dennis talking about his reason for writing the book. I started writing books about and for my friend George Miles because whenever I would speak about him honestly like I'm doing now, I felt a complicated agony beneath my words that talking openly can't handle. So he talks a lot about how he thinks that George thought that he loved him because he was nice to him, so it was convenient, and it was flattering that Dennis maybe, you know, saw something in him that other people didn't see. So it says, maybe George loved how fiercely Dennis thought he was amazing and not just too fucked up. When he became officially bipolar and Dennis started fighting to unearth the gist of that amazing little kid he'd met, George wanted to believe that kid was trapped somewhere inside him, and he fought too, and he called the struggle love because Dennis did. But if George didn't love Dennis, and there's no evidence he did, then I guess I never loved him. I love something else that this is torn from. One more. I use that word love about you too, but if you were to ask me now, do you? I might say yes, but it would be to calm you down. You see, that question, simple as it probably seems to you, is very stressful when you know the answer that its speaker's hoping for. In your case, yes, I did, but that was when I thought that you were just here for me. Now I know you better and realize that I don't know you in the slightest. And when you're less in artwork I'm so glad I saw than like a massive growling lion face whom I must appease, I'm not sure. See, this book is like very poetic. Like also I feel like if you maybe like poetry, you should check this one out. So yeah, I'm gonna try to finish this up today, maybe tomorrow at the latest, and then I will update you on my final thoughts. But guys, what the fuck? I just finished this book and I'm like damn near tears. I can't even speak. I can't even speak. Dare I say it? Is this another 4.5? I absolutely loved this book. A couple of the stories were a little bit weird. Like I said, very experimental, a little bit too weird for me. The last two, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking. You can feel the love that Dennis has for this man, and like it's about suicide and yearning. Oh my god, gut-wrenching, horrific, so sad, so fucking sad, so sad today. I loved this. Listen, am I going through a crisis? I'm going through a 4.5 crisis right now. But I highly recommend this one if you're looking for something like weird, experimental, transgressive. I keep saying these words over and over again. Would I recommend it for someone that just wants like a straightforward, easy like romance or something? Absolutely not. It's Dennis Cooper. So yeah, it like I said, a couple of them are weird. A couple of them, I think maybe it would be 5 stars upon reread for me. Like I kind of have to go back and like reread some things and think about like what he's trying to say, because some of them are really out there for me. But all of them, you know, have to do with like him trying to process why he wasn't fully loved in return or loved in the way that he wanted to be loved. And this is so beautiful. This is such a beautiful fucking book. I don't know. I tabbed so much. I'm like, this might be 5 stars. I don't know why I'm having like a crisis this month. I changed my mind. I'm giving this book 5 stars. I think parts of it just deeply resonated with me in a sense that it doesn't matter that some of them were weird. It doesn't matter that some of them were too weird for me. Is it a perfect book by any means? No. But I absolutely loved it and it meant something to me. Therefore, I'm going with 5 stars. I'm going with 5 stars. I can't keep justifying my 4.5s. I sound like a crazy person. This is 5 stars. There, I said it. I gave another Dennis Cooper book 5 stars. I love Dennis Cooper. I love Dennis Cooper. I'm getting a phone call. Bye. Okay, hello. It's like 2 days later. I've been very stressed. A lot going on in my personal life that, I don't know, a lot of emotions to process. But I started Mrs. March by Virginia Fietto. And this book here, I'm like almost halfway, and let's talk. So Mrs. March, this is kind of like a, it's like a lit fic thriller, okay? And we're following this woman, Mrs. March, who is married to a famous author, George. We don't know Mrs. March's first name, but we know George, okay? And he just came out with a new book. It's like successful, and she talks to one of like the neighbors or whatever, someone that like works at the store, and they were like, oh, I read George's new book, and I love that he based this character off of you. And she's like, oh, excuse me, what do you mean? What do you mean he based this character off of me? Because she says that the character in his book is a whore, okay? So she's like, oh my God, my husband based this whore character off of me. So now she is spiraling. So this book, we are following her sort of descent into madness as she just spirals throughout the whole book, thinking that her husband thinks these, you know, poor horrible things about her. And that's basically it. She finds like a newspaper article about a woman who died, who was strangled, and she like assumes that it's her husband. So now she's trying to like solve a murder and she's suspicious of her husband the entire book, and she just gets worse and worse as the book goes on. Sounds great in theory. I'm not a huge fan of the writing. It's kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of like a lit fic thriller, like not a whole lot's going on, but at the same time, it's like we're learning about Mrs. March, and the way that it's written, it's like Mrs. March did that, and Mrs. March does this, and Mrs. March doesn't believe in that, and Mrs. March thinks that this is that, and Mrs. March went to the store today, and Mrs. March woke up out of it. Like, oh my fucking God. I'm just annoyed by the way that it's written, but it's also identical to My Husband by Maud Ventura. But I think this book came out before My Husband. So My Husband straight up copied this book. Like Maud Ventura straight up pretty much copied this book, except in that book there's no like murder mystery. It's more of just like lit fic for 90% of it. So yeah, and that book was like my husband, and this one's like Mrs. March, Mrs. March, Mrs. March. And I feel like we're learning about Mrs. March, like she's telling us stories about her life, we're learning a little bit about her, but at the same time, I feel like I still don't know who the fuck she is, and yeah, I just kind of feel like I'm reading a book about nothing. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't hate it, but I'm like, okay, I just want to be done with this. I feel like Mrs. March just needs a fucking hobby. Like she needs to stop conspiring, and she needs a hobby because she's like rich and doesn't work and has a housekeeper, and the housekeeper's cooking for her and cleaning for her and doing everything while she just spirals about her husband all day long. And it's like, girl, relatable. But also like get a hobby. I don't know, like go out and learn an activity. Like I don't even know. Fire your housekeeper and do your own chores. I don't know, like do something. Girl, get a life. I don't, Mrs. March is on my goddamn nerves. Her and her gloves and her ostrich purse. Okay, so I finished this book. I was not a fan of this one. I was not a fan of this one. I went with 2 stars. I don't have much to talk about because it's a thriller, so I don't have much to like analyze, but the thing that I don't like about this book, I felt like it was very predictable in a sense throughout the entire book, like just based on the facts, like just based on what's going on. And first of all, I just found the writing to be quite boring, repetitive. It was more like a character study throughout the book until you get to like the end. That's when the more sorry, I need to reposition myself, I'm sinking. That's when the more like thrillery stuff starts happening. So yeah, I just felt like it was not interesting. I could not stand this main character, and it was just quite boring, and then ended up being predictable for the most part. I didn't predict everything that happened at the end, but yeah, that was pretty much it. That was this book. I feel like Mrs. March needs a fucking job. She needs a hobby. She needs a therapist. I don't even know. I'm not into these like murder mystery type thrillers. If you're into something like that, maybe give it a go, but yeah, I don't know. I liked My Husband better. I feel like that one leans more into literary fiction, and this one leans more into the thrillery, like mystery side of things. So that's the main difference. Give this one a go if you want, but I did not vibe with this one. This is not a book for me. I'm not the audience for this. Mrs. March was on my last goddamn fucking nerve. This book ended up just being ridiculous in the end. And it's, I don't know, I don't want to give anything away. The book is very like ambiguous throughout. And I mean, I don't mind that in some books. It depends how it's done. This one, it just ended up feeling like a waste of time for me. You know, like I feel like I just wasted my time reading this book. Do I think it was the worst book in the world? No. Those are my 1-star reads. So I went with 2 stars. Like I said, read it if you want. I cannot recommend this otherwise. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say about Mrs. March. I'm glad she's over. Okay? Like, bye, Mrs. March. Oh my god, it's the month March also. But anyways, that is it. That was my vlog. Pretty successful though. Otherwise, I had 2 4.5s, The Days of Abandonment and The Princess on 72nd Street. I had one 5-star read, I Wish by Dennis Cooper, of course. I can't wait to read Dennis Cooper's backlist, but yeah, and then this one was a flop. Not bad though, not bad, because I'm used to flops, but I feel like lately I've been having more success on this channel reading whatever the fuck I want to read. So that was it. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.